One of the minor things I feel like I should mention is that the healing sort of has this one fourth edition type rule, where if you're at negative value, hit point value, and you're healed, rather than just healing normally, you'll go up to 0, and then you're healed for that amount. So, like, let's say you're being healed by 3 and you're at negative 5 HP. Rather than going up to negative 2, you just go up to 3. Which I think is... it's reasonable. I actually don't know how I feel. What do you feel about this Hammer 6?
There's a lot of ups and downs. There's, on one hand, it's kind of weird. Like, if someone's on the brink of death, and then you give them +1 health, and they're suddenly A-okay. That's a little strange, so it's a little weird in character. On the other hand, it makes it so combat isn't that brutal. Some people really love brutal combat, some people don't. I think that this will be very simple to house rule, though, so it's not a huge problem on either side.
I can definitely agree with that. Now that I think about it, personally, I think I would like to house rule it, because, I mean, that's sort of, I don't know, I do remember in 4th edition, a lot of the times, people would go down, and the cleric would immediately bring them back up, and then go down and up and down and up.
Yeah.
While if the damage is more permanent, it's like, oh, that guy's beyond saving for now.
Exactly. There's more decisions to make if the damage sticks, but some players won't want something to be so harsh. They'll be like, oh, it just kind of sucks to lie around unconscious all the time, so as the DM, I will allow you to, use the standard rules. Other players who are more familiar with 2.5 or Pathfinder will be like, no dude, that makes no sense, and it is kind of silly to do the dance where the fighter jumps up, and then falls down, and then jumps up, and falls down. On the side of being against this, a quick throwback to our movement discussion before. There are many actions that only take a part of your movement. One of those actions is standing up from prone, which only takes 5 foot movement speed. So if you're knocked down, and someone gets you back up, you're able to stand up, move 25 feet, and then attack without any trouble. In 4th edition, at least you had to expend your full move action to stand up, and then you could expend your standard to get a move to run the hell away. Now, there is nothing there. You bridge that gap on the turn you get up.
That is a very good point. I can imagine it being very silly. The dead man was walking again. Well, not really walking. They're running at full force towards you with the sword.
Yep, and then you fall down because you get hit once, and then the cleric goes, bam, cure light wounds, up with 3 health again, you charge again, and down, and up, and down.
I can totally see making a character with not that many hit points, but just, that's his entire plan is to Zerg rush the enemy and each turn after he's healed back up.
You stack movement speed and attack damage, and that is all you need.
Elf Barbarian. Bam!
So that is quite a problem here. They might not perceive the mix of the prone rule and the health rule, but we'll have to see how that pans out, because I can imagine this being very stupid, but you can always house rule very, very easily. It doesn't take any rules changes other than this one.
Alright, so next we have rests. The short rest, you regain hit points equal to your level plus constitution modifier for every hour that you rest, and that seems pretty reasonable. It's a lot of health compared to Pathfinder and such.
Yeah, it's a ton of health.
But it scales a little better than the other system.
Yeah, because there is the level there. It starts out very weighted towards high con characters, and then balances out to be really pretty even for everyone. But it still scales better, and it's a little more reasonable.
It doesn't take class into account.
Yeah.
But overall, it seems to be sort of a smaller number of hit points, so it seems more reasonable even if its scaling's a little off.
Although, don't forget, this is not during the short rest you regain this amount. This is every hour. So the longer you rest, the more you heal. If you got stabbed with a harpoon of lightning and destruction 2 hours ago, that wound could be entirely closed, and as if it had never happened because you took a nap under a palm tree.
I'm really much more a big fan of bringing the cleric along. This makes more sense.
Yeah.
But there's optional rules, and it's good that they're facilitating them. So the long rest variant on it is it's sort of the same as the short rest one, except there's an additional con score, health hit points healed after taking a nap.
So you get a little bump at the end, assuming you did have a full sleep, which is good, and it gives people a static bonus for taking a longer rest than just a few hours at a time. Because maybe everyone just wants to rest for 3 hours because that's the optimal amount of time, or because they just want to rest for 3 hours and they want to keep doing stuff and then get into another fight and then rest for 3 hours. But this way you encourage players to actually live a normal life.
Yeah. I like it a little bit. I think I could live with this. There's less random rolling involved just for the sake of rolling. But it's still too much for me. I wish I could have slower recovery along with sort of a rest roll.
Yeah, and the level plus con gets pretty big.
Alright, let's check the next one.
Oh yeah, the bloodied rules are interesting, but a little easy to break.
Yeah, I think it's one of those rules that's like, if you have a bunch of people that won't abuse them, then they're sort of cool, but there's so many ways you can play with them. But let's talk about it.
There's some very good intentions here.
Yeah. So, rather than the hit dice, you have... The first thing you have to remember is now you have a bloodied value equal to half your hit point maximum. When your hit points are equal to less than your bloodied value, you're bloodied.
And bloodied is a term that comes from 4th edition that they brought back here.
Which I think is actually good. I think they should use bloodied more often. I think it was actually a pretty neat mechanic.
Yeah, it was a good mechanic, although there's tons of gripes that can be made. Bloodied is something very interesting.
But how this works is for every 5 minutes you rest, you regain hit points equal to 1, plus your level, plus your constitution modifier. So that seems a lot. But the thing is you can either regain it up to your hit point maximum, but if you're bloodied, you can only go up to your bloodied value.
The funny part is, let's say you rest for 20 minutes and regain up to your bloodied, then the cleric casts a +1 health heal spell, you wait another 20 minutes and you're back at max.
Yeah, so it heals fast, which is obnoxious, but also it's so bizarre the little things you can do with it. It's like, oh, I'm just going to make sure you're just a little above half health, and all of a sudden you can regain all the way up to maximum.
It's also worth talking about refocus, one of the most, if not the most, bizarre part of healing so far. This basically says that if you're a really tough dude, you can pound your fists together and concentrate about how tough you are, and all your wounds will close.
It's an action, and it's a DC 10 Constitution check, and if you succeed, you gain hit points equal to 1 plus your Constitution modifier. So it's a small amount of hit points, but you can do it as an action, and an action's every 6 seconds. So all of the players will just be, well, we're all pumping our fists together between the battle, and we're gaining...
Yeah. just imagine, like, the party becomes a football team and just, huddles up, growls, and heals to full. It's really strange and a very funny image. If anything, this is probably the worst of their alternate healing rules.
Yeah. I totally see this as, like, if you're playing a barbarian or something,
yeah,
and you're just like, ugh, that would be pretty funny.
Like, I can see them making refocus perhaps a feat that you could use a few times per day for really tough characters that gives you maybe temporary health.
Yeah.
Things that are representative of maybe your willpower. But no, these actually will close your wounds and heal you up to full.
Chuck Norris is so manly.
Yeah, Chuck Norris is so manly that he can pound his fist together and growl until he's fully healed. This is the problem we have here.
Alright, so we've covered why we don't like all of these. I want to ask you right now, Hammersticks. What's sort of your solution here? I'm going to put a little constraints on you. Using their hit dice mechanics in some way, what sort of balance do you see you being able to find?
Using the hit dice.
I guess you can try something else, but first thing I want you to do, using hit dice, what rate do you regain them at, and how do you use them to make it balanced?
That is a totally understandable thing. Since they are definitely going for the hit die, we should work within that. Perhaps if you regained a hit die per night, or maybe hit die equal to con mod +1, like they said before, and then you could slowly stock them up and use them over time. Or if heals, much like they did in 4E, caused you to expend your healing surges, if heals caused you to expend your hit die. The other thing is that players really shouldn't be able to restore so much health between each and every single combat. So if you give players the ability to restore only a few hit die per day, 1 or 2, perhaps scaling like every 4 levels you gain the additional hit die after a long rest. But really, you shouldn't heal in short rests unless you expend the hit die you gained in a long rest.
I can definitely agree with you. It's honestly very hard to get a good scaling solution because hit points scale so much with level. I've complaints against that, but that's way beyond the scope of this discussion.
Yeah, they're not going to change that anytime soon.
No way, no how.
And if they did, I'd probably go back to D&D.
But something like only being able to spend some amount of hit die during a single rest, but how do you balance that? Like, at first it's like, oh, you can only spend a single hit die during a short rest. Well, that seems reasonable. So at level 1, that's all of your hit die. That's your entire. It could heal almost your entire health. But at higher levels, that's only like 1/20th of your health.
Yeah, that's why. So once again, a new hit die every 4 levels, perhaps.
That could be an interesting, yeah.
So at level 20, you're still rolling 5 hit die, but it's not obnoxious. You're not rolling 20 hit die, which is a whole lot of math, a whole lot of confusion, and a whole lot of healing for really no reason. The cool part about a lot of games is that if you're in danger, your healer has a different role than usual. It's not just tank and spank. You don't just go into combat, fight, and heal. After the combat's over, maybe your mage is down, and you need to take a day to rest, get the mage to prepare his spells, and get him back to full over time, instead of taking a brief nap or pounding your fist together.
Overall, it's something that people could argue for years and years and years until they really find a good system. Hit dice are an interesting idea, but it's hard to get them to really scale unless you want to do things like, oh, at a short rest you can spend 1/8 of your hit die.
Yeah, which is really dicey, because we get into all kinds of other mathematical issues, and it goes on and on and on.
Believe me, I've looked at the math. I've spent like an hour thinking how to make hit die work, and it's very complex. I understand why Wizards is having such troubles.
We really can't blame them, but we have to hope and pray.
Yeah.
And we'll even send this video to them, and if they look at it, we'll be more than happy.
But overall, I'm glad that they have modules for things, and you can always like me personally, screw all this shit, 1 HP a night.
Yeah.
Per level.
There's always house ruling, and D&D 5e encourages it heavily. Let's talk about death.
Oh, death. I love death. Not the entity. I love the concept of death, which is sort of represented by the entity. But regardless, death is pretty interesting.
They keep with their theme of being very forgiving.
Yes, but I think they're pretty cool mechanics.
Yeah, they do have a lot of really cool mechanics that they've added in that were not present in any other edition of D&D.
But first thing you talk about, when we're talking about death,
when you die.
When you die. How do you die? In D&D Next, you die when you drop to a negative number that equals your Constitution score plus your level. So if I'm, in this example, the person's 5th level and has a 14 Constitution, they'll die when they hit negative 19 or less.
Which is cool because it scales, but it scales slowly. Although your health may rise drastically, like you get a new hit die per level, which is huge. You're getting 5 or 6 health every single level, but your threshold for dying only increases by 1, maybe 2 if you buffed your con somehow.
Which is rather interesting, and we'll see why they did it when we talk about what actually happens when you die.
Or when you're dying.
Dying. So, if you're reduced to 0 hit points or fewer, you begin the process of dying. So, if you regain any hit points, you'll stop dying because you'll go above 0 immediately, as we were talking before. But the actual thing you do when you're dying is each turn you make a death saving throw. It's a DC 10 Constitution saving throw. If you fail, you take 1d6 damage, which cannot be reduced in any way. Which is interesting, because first you think 1d6 damage. Well, that doesn't scale at all. When I have really high health, what does 1d6 matter to me? But we're only talking about negative HP, which scales, as we said before,
very slowly. So keep in mind that 1d6 can be actually quite terrifying.
So for this 5th level, it's 19. So another 3 HP when they may be already at like negative 9. You could really die in, 5 rounds maybe or something.
Yeah, you could even die in 1 or 2 if things go poorly.
So that's pretty interesting. They made it scale by making the deaths not scale as much. But another interesting thing that I like actually a lot, if you roll a natural 20, you regain 1 hit point.
Which once again puts you at 1.
So that will put you back up. So it's sort of interesting, because there's times in other games where it's like, oh, I'm dying, I guess I'll have to wait till someone comes and saves me. There's a small chance, a very small chance, but there's a 5% chance that you're just gonna be able to be in there. So when you're rolling that death saving throw, it's not like, oh, I just hope I don't die. It's like, oh, I hope I can get back into the fight so I can save my friends.
There's always a little chance.
It's dramatic tension.
It is. Like, really, hey, the chance is very low, but every roll you're thinking, come on, 20. Come on, 20. In a lot of systems, you're just like, don't die. And then when you're stabilized, you just kind of hang out. You're just sitting there. With this, each roll has you gritting your teeth.
It's a gambler's paradise.
It definitely is. This whole system definitely is, with advantage and disadvantage especially. We should also talk about the DC 10 Constitution saving throw. It seems low, it's not. Remember how your saving throws do not scale and they go off of your stats? So a fighter with a 16 con at level 15 still only gets a +3.
Which is really good, because fighting against death isn't something that you just suddenly get better at.
Yeah, you really have to be one tough mother to actually be able to combat death consistently.
So that's... You always, when you see the DCs now, you have to adjust and be like, wait, that's just stat. That's no other modifier, so it makes sense if it's low. Someone will always struggle with death. Doesn't matter how powerful they are. When death comes knocking on their door,
it's scary.
It's always scary.
No matter what.
So, to finish this off, if you roll 3 successful saving throws, you'll become stabilized, and you'll no longer go through the dying process.
And those do not need to be consecutive, much like in 4E. You can just roll, and you'll tally them up over time.
Which I think is pretty neat. So, while you're rolling it, you're like, okay, I need to not get a bunch of failed ones, or I might just die, and I need to get 3 successful ones so I can just feel safe, but I can roll that 20.
And we talked about the dramatic tension. Once again, they can be spread out. So maybe you get your first one, and then you get a series of failures, which really puts you on edge. But then you get one more, and you're getting closer and closer to dying. It adds a lot of tension for a player who is currently unconscious and doing nothing.
Exactly. Pretty much, dying rules are all about the dramatic tension, because the player's not going to have any options. All they're doing is rolling when their turn comes around, so there has to be something exciting for them. And this is a really exciting system. I think this is one of the best death systems I've seen so far in D&D.
Yeah, definitely. Although we don't like their healing systems, their death systems are miraculous, and actually the single most exciting set of rules I've ever seen for death. And I've seen dozens of systems. This is rather impressive, rather fun. I could never say before now that I like dying in character.
It's really exciting. Death comes knocking on your door, better have a party.